Big Apple Blitz with Anthony Rivardo and Matt O'Leary.
Hello and welcome to another Big Apple Blitz. What is going on? Matt O'Leary alongside Anthony Rivardo. And how you doing after that big Giants win yesterday?
I'm doing great. I mean, it was a shocking one. I didn't see it coming. I didn't think the Giants were going to win this game, but man, Brian Dable got in his bag. Daniel Jones turned in one of the best performances that he's had in the last couple of years. Looked great. Tyrone Tracy Jr. bursting onto the scene. And guys, I've been saying it for weeks. Don't lose hope. Don't lose confidence in Deonte Banks. What a performance he had against DK Metcalf. Looked every bit of a shutdown number one cornerback. A great performance from the Giants. Now, not as much can be said about the Jets, and we'll dive into that later on, but very happy to be talking on a Victory Monday for Big Blue.
Yeah, we got to start with the team that actually won yesterday. Giants go on the road to Seattle. I know when we previewed this game on Thursday, we were talking at like, man, Seattle's looked really good so far this year. It's tough to go on the road and win in that building. And credit to this Giants team for going on the road and winning that game. It did not start all that well, obviously, as seemingly a 102-yard fumble return for a touchdown puts the Giants in a 7-0 hole. Initially, it's like, oh boy, here we go. But they responded well to that. That's a really tough swing to take, right? Like the Seattle jumps out to a lead. Rashawn Jenkins, 102-yard fumble recovery, and they responded. So I want to hear what your biggest takeaways are, what you thought the biggest moments of this game was, and how you feeling for Big Blue.
Honestly, my biggest takeaway from this game is that this 2024 draft class, this rookie class for the Giants, is legit. All right. So we've been talking about Malik Neighbors bursting onto the scene and developing into a superstar week in and week out, right? He's looked phenomenal. He's just been crushing it. He wasn't even in this game, and yet the Giants still found a way to win. And on top of that, all those rookies looked even better. And that's the thing, is they've been getting better week to week. Like Tyler Nubin, I feel like he adds an extra layer to his game every single week. He led the team in tackles again on Sunday. Not the first time he's done that so far this season. Theo Johnson, the tight end, fourth round pick. He's been struggling so far this season, but if you've been watching it closely on the All-22, he's been doing a lot of hidden things off the ball that shows he's actually developing into a solid player. And then finally, 5 receptions, 48 yards yesterday afternoon, had a great performance. And Tyrone Tracy, I mean, he had 18 touches on the ground for 129 yards. What more can you ask for? Maybe he is the Giants' RB1 going forward. So that's really my number one takeaway with this game and with the first 5 weeks of the season. The Giants' rookie class is a core foundational group that's been transforming week to week in front of our eyes and developing into a solid group of players. So love what I saw from these rookies.
Yeah, that's going to be huge for this Giants team. And like, again, I don't want to take anything away from this win. It was huge. It was a really nice win from the New York Giants. But in a year, what many expect to be a down season, something that you could always take, solace in is like your rookies and your young guys. You want to see the development and the growth there. And that's exactly what you got from, first year players. Tyrone Tracy really popped off, 18 carries, 129 yards in this one. And then obviously Darius Slayton had a nice bounce back game as well. 8 catches for 122 and a touchdown. It was a bit of a slow start for him through the first 4 weeks of the year. I know you're a big Darius Slayton guy, so I had to feel good that he got in the end zone and responded nicely in this one.
Yeah, I mean, it was a great performance from Big Play Slay. He had a couple of huge catches, one down the right sideline, which was a perfect pass from Daniel Jones, and then another one left side of the field for a 41-yard touchdown. The Giants' most explosive passing play of the season so far, and 2 beautifully thrown balls from Daniel Jones. Got to give him all the credit for that. And also just highlight the fact that Slayton, it's still a couple more drops yesterday. Wan'Dale Robinson, some drops. The drops are definitely a problem for those two. I mean, really for this entire Giants receiving core, if you want to even add in some of the drops that Neighbors has had through the first 3 weeks, or first few weeks rather. But Slayton bounce back performance. Giants fans calling for him to be traded, saying he doesn't even deserve to be on the field, all that crap. And now he just shut everybody up with this performance. So I love to see it. Huge game from him. But it's all about stacking it, right? Like, we got to see this continue. And that's going to be the number one thing for Daniel Jones, especially. Like, he's been getting better week to week. He's been playing good football. This was great football on Sunday afternoon versus the Seahawks. He finally turned in a really excellent performance. Let's keep it going, though. Now next week, prime time for Daniel Jones. We know how bad he's been in prime time in his career. Can he do this again? Can he have another performance like this and get the Giants to 500? Not to look too far ahead and kind of bring that up, because I know we'll do that on Thursday. But, I mean, listen, Jones played great. The receivers played great. This is what you envision from this Giants offense entering the season with Brian Daboll calling plays.
Yeah, I mean, Jones, I wanted to pull up the numbers. 23 of 34, 67.6 completion percentage, 2 touchdowns, no turnovers in this one, which is obviously a great sign there. You want to see that out of Jones. You want to see him continue to stack games. He hasn't played poorly in some of the more recent losses. It was kind of like, Jones is playing okay, but they're struggling to get in the end zone. This week, that wasn't the case. He had the 2 passing touchdowns, which obviously came up really big for this team, and he made the plays necessary to win. So year 7 leap still live.
It's still here. I mean, hey, maybe even the year 6 leap is happening. I don't know. Maybe he's turning a corner. Possibly. It might be going on. But yeah, you're right. Like, no turnovers. He hasn't committed a turnover in several weeks. He's kept the ball clean. And in this game in particular, it's not only the fact that he kept the ball clean and managed the game, he actually made plays. That's the difference for Daniel Jones, because we've been saying it's been good football for him. He's been managing the game. He's been hitting underneath passes, the passes that he's expected to hit. But those deep passes he kept missing, and he hasn't been a playmaker from the quarterback position, which is what you truly need in the modern NFL. But yesterday, playmaker. He hit those deep throws. He made some big-time plays, similar to what we saw at times during the 2022 season. So, again, great performance. Still need to see more. Need to see him do it on primetime versus the Bengals and keep it going week to week. But I'd be lying if I didn't say he's been getting better week to week. I do have a little bit of confidence that he can continue to compound his success and get better against the Bengals in week 6. So, yeah, I mean, I'm surprised to be here now in week 5, where I'm starting to warm up to Daniel Jones and feel a little confident in him. But, hey, it's, I'm a Giants fan at the end of the day. So I'd rather dive the team, and he is the quarterback of the team for better or for worse. And, man, I'm happy on a day like yesterday to see him play well.
Absolutely. This Giants defense, I thought, was a really big story as well. Clear the Seahawks scored 20 points. 7 of them came off the fumble on the goal line. So, realistically, a 13-point performance from this defense. Can't ask for too much better. The big standout for me, I know that you mentioned Tyler Nubin, who had a great day, 9 tackles in this game. Dexter Lawrence, 3 sacks, 2 tackles for a loss. You want to touch on just how good he's been for the Giants this year and just in general? It's really, sorry, Coach, just taking a sip there. That's bad co-hosting on my part, but it's
that's fine. No, Dexter Lawrence, listen, the way that he's been performing week in and week out, I mean, season in and season out. Now we're at a point here with a week 5 performance where he put together 3 sacks. Okay, he's a nose tackle. I think a lot of Giants fans, I mean, I got really pissed off on Fireside Giants this week, going through some comments of Giants fans saying that they wanted to trade Dexter Lawrence. I got pissed off of guys saying that Brian Burns isn't living up to the hype of the contract. So I know that we were mentioning here Burns and Lawrence, the two of them, dominant forces. And I've been saying look closer at these games for Brian Burns, these play-to-play moments where he's setting things up for later in the game. And that's exactly how he got that sack in the 4th quarter. Watch the way that he was setting things up in the 1st and the 2nd and doing some pass rushing moves, counter in the 4th, boom, gets a sack. And then Dexter Lawrence, I mean, the guy's being double and triple teamed almost every single play and still applying pressure and getting sacks. I think if you look around the league right now statistically, Dexter Lawrence is Defensive Player of the Year, right? I mean, this guy is an absolute monster.
No, absolutely. I was going to say the last 2 years, 2nd team All-Pro. He finished 9th in Defensive Player of the Year voting last year. I think it would be a crime unless something changes over the next 12 games. He's got to be a 1st team All-Pro from how he's played this year. And I would say at worst, top 5 for Defensive Player of the Year. You can make the case that he should be higher and maybe even win the award based on how he's played so far. But not a surprise for me. I think he's one of the league's best interior players. It was just so shocking. And I think we brought it up the last episode, or maybe, one of the more recent ones, that some fans were like, yeah, Giants could trade him or whatever. And it's only a nose tackle, but he makes life so much easier for your edge defenders with what he commands from the interior guys on the offensive line.
Yeah, I mean, he pushes the pocket, pushes offensive linemen into the laps of the quarterback, and creates one-on-one opportunities for those edge rushers. And Brian Burns does take advantage of those, contrary to the belief of many Giants fans. He is a disruptive player. And then Kayvon Thibodeau even got his half a sack yesterday, assisted by Dexter Lawrence, no less. And he's been productive as well. And then one of the biggest question marks that we had for the Giants going into the season, and even through the first 4 weeks, what's going on at DT2? Who's playing alongside Dexter Lawrence? Is anybody going to step up there? DJ Davidson had 2 sacks. Does anybody listening to the show know who DJ Davidson is? Was anybody familiar with him? Familiar with his game going into this one? I mean, I know he had a couple of decent performances last season. He had an injury that sidelined him. He was, so more context on DJ Davidson, was having a decent year and was playing some good football. And then I think it was against the Cardinals. Somebody dove at his leg and then alligator rolled him, and he was out for the next few weeks. It was really dirty. And then he kind of wasn't the same player through the end of the season. But he had some flashes last year. Like, we were like, okay, maybe there is something there. Now he gets back on the field, gets significant playing time in week 5, 2 sacks. Guy was a monster. So maybe the Giants have more talent on that defensive line than we even gave them credit for. And that's saying something, because we gave them a lot of credit for the talent that they had in those top 3 defensive linemen. But man, even maybe looking further past the big stars, seems like the Giants have a few gems on this defensive line as well.
Yeah, they do. The defensive line I definitely look at as a strength for this New York Giants team. Someone who's got a ton of criticism this year. Deonte Banks, you mentioned, had a really strong game against DK Metcalf in week 5. What do you think led to the bounce back this week, and how would you describe his play against Seattle?
Yeah, I mean, I thought that his play against Seattle, there's no better word for it than elite. I mean, we're talking about at the end of the game, Geno Smith trying to put together some clutch drives, and he wasn't even looking the way of DK Metcalf because he wasn't looking the way of Deonte Banks. It was actually so refreshing to see something like that. I don't know when the last time I've seen a Giants cornerback turn down a complete side of the field and force a quarterback to throw the other way. But that's what was happening. You would see Geno Smith get to the line of scrimmage, look around the field, notice where Deonte Banks is. Ball is snapped. It doesn't even look in his direction, refuses to throw towards DK Metcalf. That is tremendous impact. That's CB1 lockdown impact. And we haven't seen that in a long time. But again, I've been saying it every week. It's not like Banks is just playing the worst football in the world. It's not like he's just getting burned on every single play. His coverage has been tight. And hey, having tight coverage, that's the toughest part of playing cornerback in the NFL. And he's had that down. Now it's just about adding the ball skills together and doing some of the other small things and ironing out his game. And he did that. He had 3 pass breakups and a forced fumble. So the ball skills were absolutely on display. So he's taking those little minor criticisms and those minor weaknesses, and he's slowly but surely ironing them out. I mean, reminder to Giants fans, the kid is 23. This is his 20th game played in the NFL. If he's not turning the corner by game 30, all right, maybe we could start to be concerned. But by game 20, and we're showing flashes here and there and progress and tight coverage, yeah, I'm feeling good about Deonte Banks the same way I was feeling good about him 2 weeks ago when he let up 2 touchdowns. I just feel even better, and I feel like I could say I told you so to a lot of Giants fans now. So I love it. I love what I saw from Banks.
Yeah, I do think he is a number 1 corner, by the way. I know maybe earlier on this year, there were some questions of like, what is he actually going to be? Did Giant fans overrate him off of his performance last year? But I know at times it didn't look great. You mentioned the 2 touchdowns against, in a recent week here, but I do think he is a number 1 corner. And he displayed that against a really good wide receiver in this league. DK Metcalf is a physical specimen. He is not an easy guy to defend, and to go up and break up a few passes, to even cause a forced fumble as well. That's the kind of stuff you need to happen, like creating turnovers and capitalizing on them to win a football game, to win a game on the road when you're underdogs. So I was really impressed by him and would expect him to continue to grow. The preaching of the patience with Deonte Banks, I think, was, wise choice of words from us earlier this year.
Yeah, I totally agree. And, you've seen it like with Sauce Gardner. There's been highs and there's been lows for him, and he's had criticisms of his ball skills. But the number one thing with Sauce is the coverage is always good. Like, it's tight coverage. And that, again, is the toughest part of playing cornerback. And that's what we've seen from Banks as well. So patience is a virtue. It's very important to remain patient with young players. And hey, all these Giants young players are stepping up to the plate. I think that we're seeing now, we know that it's been a rebuild over the last couple of years. The Giants overachieved in 2022. They made the postseason. They came back down to earth last year. What are we getting this season? I think one of those things that we are getting is development. We are seeing young players continue to take steps forward, whether that be Wan'Dale Robinson now in year 3, looking like a legitimate receiving threat, whether that be a rookie like Tyrone Tracy bursting onto the scene. We've got a foundation here, and it really highlights the night and day difference between this roster construction versus when Dave Gettleman was a general manager. And I have my criticisms of Joe Schoen, no doubt. But you can't deny the fact that his ability to build out a roster and find some talent in the middle rounds, night and day difference between this and Dave Gettleman.
100%. I can't believe Dave Gettleman held on to the reins as long as he did with the New York Giants. But I would say, Joe Schoen's not without criticism, but I think he's done a pretty good job over his first, 3 years with the Giants. I think that's only going to continue. We talked a lot about the most recent draft class, but even, the one from a year ago, Deontay Banks obviously has a huge game in this one. And I think you have to be optimistic about the young talent here. Again, maybe this isn't a team that's going to be a playoff team in 2024, but if they're scrappy, win, 6 or 7 games, and there's some signs of life with the young talent on this roster, I think you gotta count that as a win for their development.
Got to count it as a win. And I think there's been a lot of wins for the development of these young guys all over this team and for the development of this entire team, even the veterans and the coaching staff. And that's kind of where I want to go next, is just to highlight and praise Brian Daboll and his staff, because they've opened themselves up to criticism. They've made mistakes. I mean, week 2, we absolutely tore into Brian Daboll. Everybody did, and he deserved it. Week 5, this is a signature game for Brian Daboll as head coach of the Giants, in my opinion. I mean, this was a perfectly called game plan. He was executing every single time the Giants needed a good play call. He was delivering. And then on top of that, he fired the special teams coordinator, Thomas McGahee, who was with the Giants for like a decade this offseason. Fired him, brings in Mike Groh, formerly of the New York Jets. Mike Groh pulls something out of his pocket for that fourth quarter field goal from the Seahawks. He instilled that play for Isaiah Simmons to jump over the line of scrimmage and block that field goal on Tuesday. It was something that they just added to the playbook and wanted to hold on to for a crucial moment, found the perfect time to utilize it, and give credit to the special teams for executing. And the special teams has been a lot better this season for the Giants than it's been in years past. But yeah, absolutely excellent execution on that play. Clutch moment from Isaiah Simmons and Bryce Ford Wheaton to return it for the touchdown. Giants find themselves on the winning end, and coaching had a big part to play.
It absolutely did. I wanted to get into some of the comments here. Rocco says, have to eat crow on Slayton. Great game. He did. What were the numbers? He went over 109 yards. And did he get in the end zone yesterday? Yes, he did. 122. Yep. Excuse me. 8 catches, 122, and a touchdown on 11 targets.
Yeah, hell of a performance. He was getting open. He hauled in 2 deep balls from Daniel Jones that were perfectly placed. Again, we've criticized DJ for the inability to hit those. He hit him yesterday, and Slayton was the beneficiary of it, as he usually is throughout Daniel Jones's career when throwing the ball downfield. But yeah, great performance from Slayton. Great performance from Wan'Dale. He didn't have the yardage. He never does. All of his passes are short, but he makes plays after the catch, picks up first downs by breaking tackles, finds ways to get into the end zone. He's just very shifty in that regard and productive in that regard. But I mean, the whole Giants offense, and we haven't even really mentioned the pass protection and the way that this offensive line blocked in both the running game and the passing game was phenomenal. We talk about night and day differences with some of these things. I mean, the offensive line is the biggest of all of those. This Giants offensive line is not only average, I think it's good, and it's really transformed the Giants offense.
No, it really has. The offensive line has played really good football. Mo Dean's in here, says, good win for the Gents, the real New York team. How about that? Giants, real New York team here through the first 5 games of the year. And Rocco follows it up with, who would have guessed that the Jets and Giants have the same record after 5 games? So not wrong. I mean, Giants fans should be very happy today. You can victory lap it.
Yeah, I'll do the victory lap, and I wouldn't have guessed it. I definitely didn't guess it when we did our projections on the schedule drop. I didn't think this is how the season would start for either one of these teams, but here we are, and I'm excited. The Giants are actually fighting; they've got a chance, and it's fun to see. That's all I can really say. Like, this is fun watching the Giants actually put up a fight and compete. I just need to see more. I can't be satisfied after a 2-3 start. Got to see a little bit more from them.
Absolutely. Another one in here. Cuca Lake says Joe Shane got a decent coach to properly lead the team, unlike JD picking Salah, who had no control of this team. Now, a lot of concerns with the Jets coaching. We'll get to that in just a couple minutes here. But on the Giants side is something you pointed out from this game. Dable, I thought, called a fantastic game and got a lot out of this offense without their best offensive player on the field.
Yeah, I mean, listen, he put his players in position to make plays and to succeed. It was phenomenal from Brian Dable. It reminded me of why we felt he was coach of the year and why he won that award in 2022. He looked like rookie season Dable, and we've been waiting for it. So big performance from him. Got to see more of him. Like I said, it's got to be week in, week out. Can't be inconsistent. But yeah, it's one of those performances from this team that gives you confidence and says, hey, maybe we are on the right track and heading in the right direction. It's what you absolutely love to see.
Tony chimes in, great win for my Giants. Whole team effort, NYG for life. That whole team effort is the perfect way to describe yesterday's win.
Yeah, all three phases of the game. Obviously, the clutch special teams field goal block at the end, but there was also a moment where punter Jamie Gillen, who we've criticized, all Giants fans have in the past, had a really clutch, booming 60-plus yard punt to pin the Seahawks down in the 5. I think it was in the second or third quarter. So it was numerous times throughout the game that special teams made a difference. And then the offense played great, and the defense was suffocating at times for Geno Smith and the Seahawks offense. So all three phases, a complete and total team win, coaching staff involved. Again, you absolutely love to see it, and it's one of those wins that might give you some confidence in this team.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything else on the Giants here in their week 5 win before we transition to the Jets and their loss in London?
Again, as we look ahead, this week 6 performance is crucial, like make or break the season potentially, because if you can bounce back, get to 500 against the Bengals, and we're going to dive into it and preview it in our second episode of the week here on Big Apple Blitz. But this Giants team is kind of rolling in a way where week 3, they picked up a win. The defensive line was the catalyst and they dominated the Browns. Week 4, they lost to the Dallas Cowboys, but they shouldn't have. They should have found the way to win that game, and a couple things just didn't break their way. And then week 5, once again, dominant performances from players, and they get a win. So in a way, they're rolling. And if they can pick up some momentum and pick up the W's a bit more consistently, maybe we did misjudge this team. Maybe we were too harsh in the first 2 weeks of the season. Maybe we will make a run. I don't know. I can't say for sure. But, man, I'm excited to preview week 6 and see how the Giants perform in that one and see if they can change the narrative of the season.
We will get into that in the second episode this week. Before we do that, we got to talk about the New York Jets, who on the road in London lose 23-17 to the Minnesota Vikings. Just a really, really frustrating game, Anthony. The New York Jets on offense struggled mightily for the second week in a row. Aaron Rodgers wasn't good. I can pull up the box score while we're talking about it. 29 of 54, 244 yards, 2 touchdowns, 3 picks, was sacked 3 times. Another day where the offense, the running game couldn't do anything. As a team, 14 carries, 36 yards, averaged 2.6 yards per attempt. I thought the defense played really well. There was a pick 6 in this game. So the Jets defense allowed 16 points to Minnesota, who's been putting up 30 plus points every single week. Sam Darnold didn't look like the Darnold that we've seen most of this year. He was a completion percentage under 50%, 179 yards, was picked off as well, sacked 4 times. So, a passer rating of 50.3. Defense held up their end of the bargain. Offense didn't do enough. I feel like I'm watching the 22 and 23 Jets all over again, and that's not supposed to be the case with, Aaron Rodgers here at quarterback. But coaching and play calling, a major issue, and the Jets are not effective on offense. Where do they go from here?
Well, I don't know where they go from here, but I'll kind of touch on some of the things that you mentioned there and takeaways. No one's ever questioned Robert Saleh's ability to coach a defense, and the defense is great, and the defense looks great once again versus a great Vikings offense. So, you got to be happy about that. We've only ever questioned Robert Saleh's ability to coach a team, not a defense, but a team. And I think that it's been showing up a lot this season where you're like, okay, players are there making plays. There's talent on the field. Joe Douglas constructed a good roster. why isn't this converting into wins? What are we missing? And the only thing that you can really circle back to is either some of these players are not nearly as good as we gave them credit for being, or the coaching staff is failing them. And I think that it's more of the coaching staff than it is the talent of the players. I think a lot of people would agree with me, and this is more of an objective opinion because I'm from the outside looking in. I don't have any sort of love and affiliation to this team or its players. But when I watch this team, I'm like, man, Garrett Wilson is open a lot. He's making plays. But why is he running the same 3 routes all game? These are certain question marks that I have. And I think that it's easy to rag on the offensive coordinator and say the offensive coordinator is the problem and this and that. The head coach is part of the problem if he's allowing the offensive coordinator to be the problem, right? That's how I feel. And then on top of that, I think Aaron Rodgers is also part of the problem too. I'm not just going to say because he played poorly in this game, but because of some of his preferences from a play calling standpoint. I'm not saying that he's necessarily putting Nathaniel Hackett into a box because I don't think Nathaniel Hackett has much of a bag when it comes to offensive play calling. But I don't think that this perfect marriage of Hackett-Rodgers that some Jets fans, I don't know if anybody really believed it, but Rodgers kind of pitched this perfect marriage to everybody and told them buy in because I love playing under Hackett, right? That's why we're keeping Hackett because I'm Aaron Rodgers and I want Hackett. I don't think that perfect marriage exists. I think that there is a disconnect between the two of them. And as a result, it's fracturing the entire offense.
Yeah, it definitely does feel that way. And to I'll start with Hackett and then get our way to Rodgers because Rodgers isn't blame free in this. He didn't play well and hasn't the last 2 weeks. But for Nathaniel Hackett specifically, there were so many times, especially in short yardage situations, he doesn't have a clue. I didn't mind them going for it on 4th and 2 and plus territory instead of kicking the field goal. What did bother me was the play call. They ran a run out of the pistol. Like, I just don't understand what the thought process there was. Dan Orlovsky did a really great breakdown on his Twitter about why that was such a mistake. And essentially, Braylon Allen was 9 yards behind the line of scrimmage and got the ball out of the pistol, which was another, let's say, 5 yards behind the line of scrimmage. So by the time he gets it and has to go to the line plus another 2 yards, he's 7 yards away. And the Jets' run blocking has honestly been an absolute travesty this year. They've at least through the first 3 games of the year, they held up well in pass protection. The last 2 weeks has been really rough. They faced, the Vikings were number 2 against the number 2 most blitzing team in the NFL. The Denver Broncos are number 1. It just feels like the Jets' offensive line can't handle the blitz. And Rodgers, I don't know if he's missing the call outs or what it is, but I think it's a culmination of the play calling. Offensive line hasn't been as good the last 2 weeks. They can't run block worth a damn. Breece Hall looks slow too. Like, he's just not hitting the gap with any sort of speed, which is a little bit concerning. But for me, at least with Breece, we've seen way more positive tape and way more production in his career than we have in the first 5 games this year. So I'm not like trading in my Breece Hall stock. I don't think that's a fair thing to do based off the first month plus of this year. But when we've seen how many examples of Nathaniel Hackett being a poor play caller, or how many examples of, Robert Saleh being a poor head coach. And then add on top of that, Rodgers is clearly playing through the low ankle right now. And I think it's affecting him. I really do. He missed a lot of throws in this game and there were drops. Lazard had 4 drops in this game. It looks like an absolute mess on offense. It really does. And I don't know how they get that right.
It does. It's completely dysfunctional. And my biggest gripe with it is just the predictability of this offense. I feel like it's way too predictable. Stephon Gilmore made an excellent play, hell of an interception there to close the game for the Vikings. But as great of a play as it was for him, I feel like it was as equally as boring and uninspiring of a play for the Jets to throw a back shoulder fade in that situation. How many back shoulder fades can one team throw in a game? I think it's kind of ridiculous, the amount of them that they toss. Yep. Like, I get that it's Aaron Rodgers' specialty. And in fact, it's something that we talked a lot about in the offseason when they signed Mike Williams. We were like, yeah, he's the back shoulder king, Aaron Rodgers. That's going to be a perfect marriage between those two. But come on now, it's getting a little ridiculous. We saw it last week on the 3rd and 4th down. The 2 incomplete back shoulders against the Broncos ultimately cost them the game and they lose. Now we go into this game once again, clutch moment. We're throwing a back shoulder once again. Have we not learned our lesson? Like, come on now. We got to come up with something a little bit more creative in these clutch moments.
No, they do. They absolutely do. And Rodgers should be able to check out of that or do something differently. I understand he likes throwing the back shoulder, but even on that play in particular, he didn't really throw it up high. Like Mike Williams he's a go up and get it guy. I thought it was underthrown. He even said the same, after the game. It was an underthrown pass, but that happened all game long. Like again, he missed Garrett Wilson a couple times. A few plays before that, Garrett Wilson got by Stephon Gilmore on a double move and would have been wide open for a walk-in touchdown, and it was overthrown. He missed him. And again, like Rodgers, for as good as he isn't blame free in this. And a 3 interception performance, like he got absolutely baited by the linebacker dropping back in coverage on the pick 6. Awful play. And then on the second interception, he way overthrew Alan Lazard. So I just thought he's been really erratic the last 2 weeks, which clearly isn't helping things, but there's so many things wrong. Like Rodgers hasn't looked like Rodgers the last 2 weeks. The offensive line play has gotten worse. Nathaniel Hackett's Hackett, and the run game is non-existent. And all these things are, just snowballing here, and it's resulting in a 17-point performance. This is the 4th week in a row the Jets defense has allowed 17 points or less, and they're 2-2 over that span. That's not acceptable.
Yeah, and I don't know if you watched Sunday Night Football yesterday and you watched the NBC broadcast, but they had Chris Sims on prior to the game, and they were recapping Jets versus Vikings, and I thought that he said a lot of interesting things about the Jets offense. Not sure if you caught them, and he wasn't just being critical of Nathaniel Hackett. He was actually being critical of Aaron Rodgers, and I don't know if if the things that he said were coming from somebody that he's spoken to, or if there's more to this, from his career in Green Bay that I don't know about. But essentially, he was like, this Jets offense needs to use more motion, but, quote, Rodgers doesn't like that. They need to use more that misdirection, but, quote, Rodgers doesn't like that either. Well, the rest of the league does it and is successful as it, was part of the quote. Chris Sims basically ripping into this idea that there are certain concepts that are working all across the NFL and that the Jets maybe want to implement, but Aaron Rodgers doesn't like doing those things. Therefore, they're not doing them, and the offense is being held back as a result. I don't know if you've ever heard anything about that before, if that's kind of news. I don't know, but I did think it was interesting and a little bit eye-opening and maybe even damning towards Rodgers.
A little bit. I know that he's not a big motion guy. Hackett isn't either. So like last year when Rodgers went down, they still didn't really run all that much motion, and that was something that Jets fans were calling for them to do. I think they got to change it up because clearly whatever they're doing isn't working, and they got to make life easier in this offense. Like just being such a stagnant and predictable offense is a recipe for disaster. So I think that is a fair criticism of Rodgers. Now, I don't know if it's so much like Nathaniel Hackett's begging Aaron Rodgers to run motion. He's like, no, we're not doing it, kind of a thing. But I do think it's something that they're making a conscious effort of not doing. And I think it's a mix of both Hackett and Rodgers.
I think so as well. And I do think that it kind of ties into Modine's comment, though, down below, saying the offense is elementary. Maybe the Jets can play college football and make a run in the playoffs there. First of all, I think it's a funny comment. Second of all, I think he's right. This is a pretty elementary offense. The running attack isn't very creative. The pre-snap motion doesn't exist. It's very vanilla. It's a vanilla offense. It reminds me of when the Giants had Jason Garrett calling the plays for them, and it was just, oh my God, that was difficult to watch on Sundays. And so is the Jets offense right now. And again, I don't think it's because of a lack of talent. Garrett Wilson is a star. I mean, this kid is so freaking good. He's always open. He catches passes. Like, he's a great player. I think Breece Hall is an excellent player as well. I really think that it just comes down to a lack of creativity and an uninspired approach to the offensive attack.
I agree with you. And there's not a lot of positives to take away from this game. It was a very frustrating loss, but Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall both have gotten a lot of criticism from Jet fans, and I'm not saying that criticism isn't warranted. It is, and I put out a tweet, and it got some pushback on it, but it was more so saying that I think we've maybe taken at that time a 4-game sample and are focusing too much on that versus what we've seen. You can be critical, but also have the nuance to say like that these guys are good players and maybe eventually we'll get on the same page. And then Garrett goes out and has 13 catches, over 100 yards, and gets in the end zone. He had 22 freaking targets in this game. Aaron Rodgers was locked in on him. But that I might take this conversation a little bit of a different way here now. But I think not that he fixes everything, but I really do think Devontae Adams would help here because I don't think that the entire offense would be funneling through Garrett with 22 targets. The next closest was Allen Lazard with 10. As I mentioned, Allen Lazard had 4 drops in this game. He caught a touchdown pass, but he also dropped the ball in the end zone. And, taking Lazard off the field because you'd have Wilson and Mike Williams and then Devontae Adams as your 3 wide. Like, I think Rodgers leaning on Adams, like Adams isn't dropping 4 passes in a game. He's going to catch a, back shoulder throw in the end zone. He probably is going to catch, balls last week to get him in better field goal range. Like, again, he doesn't fix everything, but he helps make this offense a little bit more idiot proof for Robert Saleh and Nathaniel Hackett, which look like they are going for it this year. I don't like clearly through 5 games, they haven't been good enough, but there's a lot of pressure on Joe Douglas and Robert Saleh to win and end this playoff drought. And like, I think the addition of Devontae Adams would make life easier on offense. And that's clearly their biggest issue right now.
Sure. I mean, I don't necessarily disagree. And I'll say that maybe the pass rush, the argument of should the Jets go for a pass rusher, go for a wide receiver? I mean, I think now you lean towards a wide receiver because the pass rush has been fine. The defense has been fine. And shout out to my boy, Will McDonald, with 6 pressures, 4 hurries, and a sack. I mean, good performance from him. You guys know that I'm one of the few big Will McDonald supporters, mainly due to my Dynasty Fantasy Football League. But yeah, he's been real good and he's been productive. And then on the offensive side of the ball, clear lack of production from some of these playmakers. That I get worried that, the Jets go out there, they sacrifice more assets, they bring in Devontae Adams, and he doesn't live up to the hype either. And the offense still is stagnant because of play calling and coaching. It's, it's kind of like the question then becomes, is there a fix for this? Is there a way to turn this around? I don't necessarily know. And obviously, as a Jets fan, you have to cling on to hope and you have to say, okay, well, there's got to be a way to turn it around. There's a way to fix everything, right? But at the end of the day, I think, Robert Saleh saying that the team isn't considering a play calling change, that's probably your biggest problem here. I think that until whether it's a change in the way that they're calling the plays or who is calling the plays, I don't know if anything really gets solved until that change happens.
And that's a fair way to look at it. I think, for me, I would love to pull the plug on Nathaniel Hackett, or, we could have the conversation about moving on from Robert Saleh. I'd be surprised if either one of those things happen in season. The Jets never make moves like that. Woody Johnson's been, ever since he's been here, he's been against firing people in season. And I'm not saying that's the right way to look at it. So it's just like, I don't view that as a realistic card for them to play, as much as I think it's probably their best option to move on from first the play caller and then the head coach. Obviously, I think has been a really big issue. I just don't think that's a card that they could actually play. So I would like to see them take the shot and hope that it works. It's kind of like they've made their bed. Like you go out, you get Aaron Rodgers, you're trying to make it work. You got to do whatever you can to make it work, because if they're going to go down sorry on offense every week and just, have Garrett have 20 catches a game or 20 targets a game rather. And, Lazard drop 3 passes a game. It's second year in a row that he leads the NFL in drop rate. Like it's just, and I'm not blaming the entire offensive issues on Allen Lazard. It just gets a little bit frustrating when you see the same things happening over and over again. And I don't think they could change a play caller or head coach in season. So while it might not be a perfect fix, I think at least it's a Band-Aid and could stop the bleeding a little bit.
Yeah, and I'd agree with that. And listen, I hope that the trade happens. Screw it. Let's get some more excitement. Let's give some more reason to spark this offense. Let's see Devontae Adams playing gangrene. I'd love to see it happen. But, I just think that there are a lot of issues maybe not enough time to solve it all and get it ironed out. But, Jets got to keep toying around and finding a way to do it. And I think that a lot of it is going to come down to Aaron Rodgers and his health and trying to recover from this ankle tweak that's clearly bothering him. Like you said, I think until he's feeling better and, that's not affecting his ability to throw anymore. We're probably going to see some more struggles week to week, unless the Jets are able to get the ground game going. This passing attack is definitely hindered by quite a few things: Hackett, Rodgers' injury, and drops from Lazard. Everything. It's just all kind of culminating into a blow up point.
It is a slight positive spin zone. The Jets have a little bit more extra rest. They're playing on Monday Night Football. We'll preview that game, more on Monday's episode and even later in the week. I'm sure the stories will transition into the upcoming game. You know what? The whole messed up part of this, the Jets have been bad. They're 2-3 through their first 5 games. Monday night's for the division lead. Like if the Jets somehow beat Buffalo on Monday night, both of those teams are 3-3, and because the Jets would have had the head-to-head, they'd be in first place after all this. So like the frustrating thing is they are still very much so in the mix. The AFC has been just a whole lot of mid going around, and they're not all the way out of it. But they like Monday's an absolute must win. You cannot drop to 2-4. If you do, and then I think all the pull the plug on Hackett, pull the plug on Salah, like all that stuff really has to become an even stronger conversation. But again, we'll get more into that later in the week. But it's so funny that this team has looked so poorly. They're under 500. They're 2-3. In spite of all of that, a win on Monday and they're in first place.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great point. It's really important to keep perspective like that and contextualize the season. It's a really good point. But, then again, a loss on Monday, maybe you are kind of starting to hit the panic button. So we're at the point of the NFL season now. Once you're through like the first month, those 4 games, now we're in week 5 over with. We're at that point where every game just becomes so critical because this is where like one loss, I mean, even week 4, I think is when it really starts. That loss against the Broncos, you see like one loss that you shouldn't have given up can really come back to bite you 3 weeks later or so. And so now it's really crunch time. Like this is the time where this Jets team is slumping at the worst time possible because this is when you need to be getting hot. This is when certain teams are starting to get hot. And then the playoff race starts to take shape. So, great bounce back win from the Giants, not a bounce back win from the Jets, but hey, there is still hope. Like you said, they're 1 game out of 500, just like the Giants, and anything can happen on any given Sunday. Let's hope to see both of these teams turn around and keep getting some wins.
Hopefully hopefully for the Giants continue off the success that they had on Sunday. For the Jets side of things, they need to get back on the win column. We'll be back later this week to transition and start talking about these upcoming games and more storylines. So that'll do it for us on this one. Please make sure to subscribe to the channel if you're new. Follow along with Anthony's work on Fireside Giants. You can find me on Talking Jets or Matt O'Leary NY. That'll do it. I'm Matt. He is Anthony. And we will catch you next time.